So what are microgreens? Well, in essence, they are the baby version of the fully grown counterparts that we see at the supermarket. Typically, they will be harvested 7 to 10 days after you plant them. So it's a very quick turnaround. And what you are actually eating is called the cotyledon leaves. And these are the first leaves that a plant will sprout up. And once they're gone, the leaves that come in and the stems become very fibrous and difficult to eat. So the microgreens are that first stage of growth. So why would we choose to eat microgreens? Well, firstly, they're packed with living enzymes, and enzymes are proteins that are catalysts for many metabolic functions within the body. And having living enzymes in our diet helps with pretty much all bodily functions, but specifically digestion and cognition. And if we trace back the root cause of many diseases and issues that we face with our health, it often stems from poor digestion. So eating microgreens is an absolutely amazing way to add in these fresh living enzymes into our diet and help with the metabolic functions. How I like to visualize this is like a fire. So our digestive system is burning like a firewood and would continue to burn at the rate that it's at. But if, like a fire, we added in lighter fuel and we squirted it on, the fire would erupt and burn more readily. And that's what the living enzymes are going to do to your body, just going to make you operate in a more efficient way, leading to a longer, healthier life. Secondly, microgreens taste amazing, and there's a wide range of flavors that you can experience with all of the different species of microgreens that you can grow. You've got sunflowers that are really nutty and bold and very tasty. And then you've got radish that are super spicy and really tantalizing on your taste buds. And then you have other variants like broccoli, which taste a little bit more mellow. So depending on what you're looking for, I guarantee you will find the flavor palette within microgreens. And this makes them amazing for increasing your culinary experience. And all of the foods that you're going to be eating, it's a really great way to add flavor. Also, because they taste so great and they're so readily edible, I find that lots of kids really like to eat microgreens, and also people that don't necessarily like vegetables in their full form. Microgreens are way more digestible, way more accessible, and you probably find yourself snacking on them a whole lot more often. And finally, microgreens are very nutrient dense and contain essential minerals required for health. And if you imagine a fully grown vegetable, let's use a broccoli that's, I don't know, maybe this big. If you imagine all the nutrients are all spread out, so for us to ingest them means we have to eat a lot of this vegetable. Microgreen, however, is typically this big, and the same amount of nutrients are packed into this small little package. So when we eat them, we actually get more per bite, meaning we don't have to eat as much to get the same health benefits, which is amazing if you aren't necessarily a vegetable person. And it also means that you can add them into lots of different dishes and get even more minerals and nutrients into your diet, which is harder to do with the fully grown version because you're not just adding large pieces of broccoli or cauliflower to every meal. But microgreens, you can, and you're not going to notice it as much. It's a whole lot easier to digest. So why grow microgreens at home? Well, firstly, and the main point here is cost effectiveness. So to give context, this tray that I'm showing right now is a 10 by 20 inch tray, which is a pretty large tray size and is going to yield about a pound's worth of fresh greens. The total cost for the soil, the seeds, and the energy in this tray is just under $5. Compare that to buying microgreens at the store, you're going to be looking at about $6 for just 2 ounces of packed greens. So if you're going to be eating microgreens, growing them at home is going to be unbelievably more cost effective, and it's going to encourage you to eat more because they're not so precious. And what we've seen with the people that we provided greens to is that when they are paying so much per ounce, they tend to look after them a little bit more and sometimes not even get to them before they go off. Whereas if you're growing them at home and you've got this great, huge, abundant harvest for a really good price point, it means that you're going to be snacking on them and getting all of those health benefits. Microgreens also offer other benefits than just our physical health. I find that they are absolutely amazing for my mental health. A lot of us are consumed and distracted by various aspects of life and technology and work and news that occupy our mental bandwidth. And when we begin to grow microgreens, it's a new element into this mental bandwidth that has upside positive rewards, because you'll find yourself thinking about where the microgreens are at in their cycle. How much water do they need? How much have they grown? When do the trays get changed? All of these new inputs that we're thinking about very often have resounding positive effects, and combine that with the fact that you're going to be surrounded by living, breathing, growing plants that are alive and almost ready to consume. It's going to add to the oxygen levels in your room. But just being surrounded by that is amazing for the mental health. And if you live in a place like we do, the Midwest, where it's essentially winter for 4 to 6 months of the year and everything outside is dead, that can really play on your mind, just being surrounded by that. And having microgreens in these big trays with these abundant canopies really makes you feel a whole lot better living, and it's something that I highly recommend experiencing to see how it works for you. Lastly, Grow Microgreens is just a whole lot of fun, especially when you get into the process and you see how many different species there are, how they all interact slightly differently, how they taste differently, how they can be paired together differently. It's just a whole lot of fun for everybody in the family. This is not age restrictive. It can be done by very young people all the way up to very old people. It's very inclusive, and it's a good activity for the family to do, sharing responsibilities, talking about what's going on, talking about what you're growing next, talking about yields and densities and water. There's so much that goes into these wonderful little plants that you're going to have a whole lot of fun. And I could not, as you can probably tell, recommend growing them at home enough. Just try it, get into it. It's very, I'll leave it there. On to the next one. Let's talk about doing it. Okay, so let's talk about what you're actually going to need to grow microgreens at home. I've got out here a selection of equipment. All links will be down in the description, and like anything in the world, there are endless, infinite possibilities of choice of different brands, different entry points, different budget points. So I encourage you to do your own research. This is just what's worked for us. I'm just going to show you what you need. So firstly, we're going to have the tray. This is what the microgreens are going to grow into. These are large trays. So these are 10 by 20 inches. This may be too large for your personal needs, but we've had great success with these. And these are from a company called Bootstrap Farmer. They're very, very durable, really thick plastic. I really enjoy them, and I think they may last forever. But what's important to note here is that you're going to need 2 trays. So if you look, the top tray in this stack has holes in. I'm not sure if you can see that on the camera, but it has holes in. And then the bottom tray has no holes in. This is to allow drainage, so once the tray is full of soil and has water and the seeds on, you can lift the top tray up. You can also water from the bottom, but it allows the soil to drain and it stops the soil getting waterlogged and leading to mold. So you're going to need those 2 trays, and you'll also need a cover tray for germination, which once we have the soil and the seeds, the cover tray will go on top. And that's going to create dark conditions to allow germination, but you'll see that in just a moment in the process. If you don't want to invest in trays like this, you can also make your own, and this is just a discard tray from mushrooms that we bought, and you can do the same thing where you create your own holes. You can have 2 of these and 1 on top. This is also a lot smaller, so if you're not wanting to grow too many, you can use a tray like this. And realistically, microgreens are so hardy and so durable that you can grow them in almost any container. It's just important that you have a drainage container with something to catch the water, so you don't want it just spilling all over wherever you're growing them, and then a cover container to allow the conditions for germination, which you will see. Next up, we're going to have soil. And really, it's actually important to note here that the microgreens aren't really going to be growing in the soil, in a sense of, because we harvest them so fast after 7 to 10 days, the vast majority of the energy that they require to grow is already stored in the seed. So what we actually need is a growing substrate, somewhere for the taproot to take a hold and then to absorb water and stay moist. And that's important to know because it means that you can make various different choices in the growing medium. We do use soil, and I've got organic potting mix here that's widely available from all stores. And if you buy this in bulk, you'll get way cheaper prices too. That's what we use. I personally really like growing in soil. I've never actually done anything else, but when I see the videos of people doing it, it just doesn't resonate with me, but it may with you. You can use hemp seed mats. You can use cocoa coir. Next up, you've got the actual seeds themselves. Again, various different options. These ones are organic China rose radish. We like to grow organic non-GMO seeds for various reasons that we've linked in other videos, but you can choose the seed that suits you. I recommend getting a good seed source because the price difference isn't too drastic with buying quote-unquote cheaper seeds, but when you have a good source, you're less likely to run into mold problems, because if the seeds have mold at source, during storage, during transit, you're playing kind of an uphill game, a losing battle. So get good seeds, and I can link the company that we use. Very, very affordable. And one tip I would give you is that if you are looking to do this consistently, there is a huge price difference between buying £1 bags and £5 bags. And then after that, the differences are smaller, but up to 38, maybe 42% cheaper when buying in £5. So if you are going to be doing it long term and you find a species you like, I recommend getting the £5 bag, because if you buy in bulk, you'll never sulk. Next up, we've got water. And this is a fancy little coffee pouring container that we use. I like the gooseneck because it allows me to be very accurate. But again, you can use anything here. You can use a sprinkler head. You can use a Pyrex dish. Anything to transfer water from wherever you are to your microgreens tray. The final thing that you will absolutely need is light. Microgreens cannot grow without light. So you have various choices here. And you may be thinking, can I use sunlight? And the answer is yes, you can. But it's much harder to maintain conditions and guarantee conditions, i.e. what if it's cloudy for 3 days, or if you live here in the Midwest, what if it's cloudy for 11 days in a row, especially in winter. It's just not really that viable. I suggest getting a plant light. I'm just going to turn this one on here. You can get strip lights like this. This light was $8 and it uses almost no energy. When it's on, it uses almost no heat, and you can buy all 8 in a series and grow pretty much as many trays as one household would ever need. I would highly recommend getting this as an investment because you can control it. If I turn that on, thanks to the blessing of electricity, that's going to turn on and the plants are going to grow just below it. So they're the basics that you're going to need: tray, soil, seeds, water, and a light. But there are some additions that you can make to make this process more easy and more efficient. This is a sourdough tool of some description that Kate used to have in the kitchen. I use that. Well, Kate taught me how to use this to scrape the soil a little bit more strategically and a little bit neater, so you could get yourself one of those. I also like to weigh out the seeds in a container like this. This is a recycled yogurt cup. And when you see me actually do the process of laying the seeds, this helps increase accuracy. And we all like recycling here, so why not? Next thing is a scale like this. This is not necessary. It's not baking here. You can do all of this by eye. But if you're like me and you like data and analyzing data and focusing on increasing yields and maximizing efficiency, if you don't have a scale, you're just guessing. And this makes everything a little bit more reliable and consistent. So I'd recommend getting a scale. Next, we have just these nice little garden tools. Again, these are Kate's wheelhouse. She likes to use things of this nature. That's not going to focus, but it's just like a baby little rake and a baby spade that can be used to make these trays a whole lot neater. And then finally, what you're going to need is weights. And this is to hold down the top tray during germination, and I'll talk about why that is, but you will need weights. This is a 7.5 pound circular weight. I have 2 of these. You're going to need around 15 pounds depending on how many trays you're doing. But you can also use house bricks like this. Very efficient, very accessible, but you will need weight to hold the tray down. Another extra I would highly recommend is this. This is grapeseed extract, and this is a natural liquid concentrate of grape seeds, unsurprisingly, but it has antibacterial and antifungal properties. So when you're dealing with setting up the trays and you want to reduce mold, this does a really good job if you don't want to use the heavier chemicals like hydrogen peroxide or alcohol. Even though we have used those in the past, we started experimenting with this and had great success, and it's very affordable as well because you mix it with water into one of these widely accessible spray bottle, and it just helps to administer that grapeseed extract when you mix it with water. Okay, now that we have everything that we need to begin growing microgreens, I just want to share some key points with you to help improve your chances of success with growing microgreens based on everything that I've learned over the last 6 months of doing this. So it's important to note that your number one enemy and the number one obstacle to success in microgreens is going to be mold, especially during the germination phase. And that is because the conditions are very favorable for mold to grow. Because if you think about it, you're going to have a tray of damp, moist soil with seeds in the dark with minimal airflow. That's mold heaven. So you have to take precautions to reduce this. Otherwise, you're going to be eating moldy food, and that's not advisable at all. Ways to do that are to sanitize. And that means that when we wash the trays before we use them, it's good to sanitize them again. I will show you how I sanitize before I add the soil to every tray. This is just a step I started adding and it reduced my mold prevalence drastically. I do that with the grapeseed extract. Very, very efficient. But again, you can use isopropyl alcohol. But if you get into the habit of sanitizing everything, it really reduces mold significantly. Equally, if you are out doing your life and then you come in and you stroke the dog and then you go to do the microgreens, you got to be thinking about where that bacteria and all the harmful germs are interacting with your microgreens. So have a clean break. If you do another activity before you start dealing with your microgreens, just give your hands a wash. And then thirdly, for mold, it's to ensure you buy from good sources, because if your seeds have mold already on them and you activate that with water, moisture, temperature and darkness, there's just literally nothing you can do. So find a reputable source. This is especially true for sunflowers. They have big black cases and they are the most mold prevalent. Out of all of the trays that we've done, I've only ever lost one tray to mold that wasn't sunflower. And then sunflower, we've probably lost somewhere in the region of 12, maybe more, maybe less. But it can be a real problem and it's very disheartening to do that. So really focus on where you're getting the sunflowers from and where and how you're treating them. And if you don't want to entertain the problems of sunflower, I understand. We don't do it too much anymore. It's a lot of work. But mold is the thing that you're going to be focusing on reducing the most. And if you take those tips, you should be in good stead. So let's get into the process, how we're actually going to start growing these microgreens. Firstly, we have our trays here. And this is the tray with holes in, the tray without holes in on the bottom. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, throughout my career at doing microgreens, I have sown in the wrong tray and had no problems. It may happen to you, it's just part of the process, but always try to get the whole tray on the top because it's going to allow the soil to drain a whole lot easier. These trays have already been washed and they've already been sanitized once, but as I prefaced, mold is an issue when you're growing in these conditions, so I like to take our trusty bottle of grapeseed extract mixed with water, and I like to just spritz this all over to get that tray double sanitized. Next up, we've got the soil that we're going to be adding, and this is just potting soil that's widely available from many stores. I like the soil with Microgreen, which is a mushroom of sorts. It's a fungus and it helps with the connection between soil and roots. And I find my grows with the soil containing Microgreen just to be way better. It's optional, but it's up to you. In terms of weight for soil, I used to at one point measure this out, and it was somewhere around 750 grams per tray. And I'll put what that is in ounces, as I'm using the metric British system, European system. But now I just do it by eye. And these trays are 1¼ inches deep, and you're looking to have a substrate base of about 1 inch. I'm going to be scooping this out with a recycled tray, and I know after doing this many times, it's going to be about 6 of these. So I'm just spreading this soil out here to make it as even as possible. And what you're probably going to notice with this soil is it has a lot of wood chips and bark. This just happened to be, I bought this brand before and it wasn't like this, so there is always variance in the supply chain, but this isn't ideal. If you see your soil like this, I would recommend going for a different bag next time, because the bark and the wood is going to cause some issues with mold because it doesn't create the right connection and mold will grow readily on it. You want a more even soil. But over time, you will find a supplier that works for you. So you can see here, this corner is going to need just a little bit more. So we're just going to add in a little bit more soil into there. It's also really well packed together. So I'm just going to plop that there. Trusty little sourdough. Reuse. Special little tool. And there you go. Super easy. So you want to get this as even as possible. And then why I like these trays, And why I do it this way with these trays is because I'm going to now press that down to make it flat, which is going to allow for a more accurate and even seed spreading. But remember, this also contains bacteria on here, even though it's been sanitized. So we're just going to give that a quick squirtsy squirts with the grapeseed extract. And I'm going to press this down. Just nice and firm in all the corners. And what you'll see, ta-da, more even. And you can see that these gaps here, I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that on the camera? If you see gaps like this, it's wise to just even them out just a little bit. You want it to be as even as possible. And this soil is not ideal. If you're using a looser soil without so much wood chips in, this will go flat a whole lot easier. Okay. And then just set this tray off to the side because we'll be using that again shortly. Next part of the process is to weigh out the seeds. We're going to be sowing China rose radish, which is one of my favorites. And I know that the seed density, i.e. how many seeds is going to go on this tray, is 50 grams for this species. But I'll leave some information in the description below because it is going to change per tray size and what type of seeds. And over time, you'll find a density that works for you. But I'm just going to weigh out 50 grams. Bit cheeky. There we go, 50 G's, baby, Dana. Right, set these off to the side. Now, I'm going to move this. Thank you, scale. Put that over here. This is the part of the process that does take a little bit of finesse and practice, but you will get it over time. And what I'm going to aim to do is spread these seeds, all 50 grams, as evenly across the surface as I can. And if you imagine these are going to grow up into a nice canopy, you want it to be as even as possible. It's going to require some wrist action, some wrist muscle. And I like to go from the center here. And as you can see, I'm just going to be getting as... And you'll get a feel for this the more you do it. And as I said, with the fun aspect, look how much fun we're having. We're spreading seeds, we're laying soil. And you'll get a really good sense of muscle memory the more you do this. The first few times it may be that you get too much density in one area. It's okay. The microgreens police aren't coming to get you. And as you can see, I've still got most of this jar left. And this is already covered. So I'm just going to look at the spots that need more, which looks like this. Just get a little flickety wrist. Get as even as possible. Just about beautiful. That's why I like this little yogurt tray. Makes it very efficient for me. Okay, the penultimate step in this process is to water the seeds. And in terms of how much water we're looking for here, we want the seeds to have enough moisture to take them through the 3 days of germination without getting too dry. But we don't want them to be waterlogged because then they'll mold. So this is kind of an intuitive process, and if it helps, you can weigh out the water for the first few times. That's what I did. I know now that this one tray will take about one of these devices. This is a gooseneck coffee water boiler kettle thing that we did used to use for coffee, but it's very, very useful for doing microgreens because it has this nice pouring spout. It allows me to get an even spread along this tray. So you're just going to see how much water I put on here. It's just a pretty light soaking, and I'm just going to make sure that I get as much of this as possible. It's a very similar action to the seed spreading. Just this nice little flickety wrist. And again, you'll get better at this over time. You can also use other devices. You can use sprinkler head hoses if that works for you. You can just use Pyrex pots, whatever really gets the water on there. But as you can see, I'm not drenching this water. And depending on which substrate you're using, it will require different amounts of water. So you want it to be wet and enough in there for the seed to be like, okay, it's go time. And what we're trying to recreate here is obviously natural conditions of seeds in the ground. As soon as they have water and the space to grow, they germinate and they're like, yeah, it's time to go. That's what we're trying to recreate here. So I've just run out of water, which I kind of expected to do with the soil of this density. So I'm just going to refill this. And refilled. Trusty assistant has refilled for us. Thank you, Catherine. I'm just going to finish this tray out. If you miss a few areas, I guess it's okay, but it's better to just go back over and make sure that you have got as much as possible. And again, not looking to drench this, it's just an intuitive feel. And you can kind of see there, I haven't really missed too many spots, and if I have, I'll just give them another little splash. And there you go, this spot here. Wonderful. So this tray is now ready to go into germination. The good thing about microgreens is that you can grow multiple trays at the same time. So if you want it to grow a different species, you just do another tray with that species, and then you can actually stack them on top to go into germination. Because what we're going to do here is take this covered tray that we used before. We're not going to sanitize it again. We're going to pop that on top, and that is going to create the dark conditions required for germination. So the seed now has water, it's got the dark, and it will be warm enough because it's just at room temperature to want to germinate. You could leave this as is, and for certain species that would be okay. The brassicas like broccoli can be okay just growing under their own weight and under the weight of this tray. However, if you add weights to the top, and especially if you're stacking trays, so if you have multiple trays up to 6 in one stack, you're going to want to add weights. And these are two 7.5 pounds. I'm going to put these on the top, and what this is going to do is encourage really strong root growth, because these plants are going to be under stress from the time that they're germinating, and they're all going to lift up and work together to move this weight. So this might seem like a lot of weight, but when you've got 6 trays, I've seen them actually throw this weight off. All these little plants are just like, oh, I want to live, and they throw the weight off. So this is a really good tip for getting very, very strong microgreens and making sure that they grow very consistently, is to weight the top. Once you've followed all of these steps, it's now waiting time. These are going to go into germination. I recommend putting them somewhere that's not exposed to direct light, that's not too hot and it's not too cold, i.e. a middle shelf of a rack is perfect. And we're going to see these in 2 nights, 3 days, which is usually how long I like to germinate radish. Other species can go longer, so we'll see you then. So I'm going to start taking the weights off. And then the big reveal. Ta-da! So as you can see, these radishes have germinated very strongly. They're not green because they have no chlorophyll yet, which they'll get from the lights. And if you look in close here, you're going to see what could potentially look like mold. But what this actually is, this is the root hairs. And it's going to take some discernment, because there may be trays where you do actually get mold. But over time, and if you do a quick Google, and I can leave the links below, you'll see the difference between mold and root hairs. These plants have not had that much to drink in their germination phase. So what we're going to do is give them a good top watering. Again, you don't want to soak them, you don't want to drown them out, you don't want to cause waterlogging, but a good amount of water is going to help bring them back to life when we put them under lights. I'm again using the gooseneck. And this is very similar to when we watered for the seeds before we put them into germination. And after we do this first top water, we're going to water from the bottom, but at the moment the roots won't be big enough, so we're just going to water from the top like this in a nice swift motion. And remember, I said before, when I did the germination, it took one of these. That water there was about 1/2 to 3/4, so less. And again, I'm looking at the soil here to make sure that it's not waterlogged. But once that's done, we're just going to pop them under the plant light. Beautiful. And we'll check in with them tomorrow morning. So we're back after 7 days from planting the seeds into germination, and we have a wonderfully full tray of radish. As you can see, it's really popped up, probably about 4 inches per plant, and this is the perfect time. Ideally, actually, this probably could have been harvested this morning, but with just a week and really minimal effort. All in, I'm probably in for an hour of labor into this tray, maybe less realistically. And we have a whole tray of greens to eat. These are ready to go. Harvest them with a knife and we just cut from the bottom. Super easy. And there you go. Beautiful, fresh radish or other microgreen, whatever species you're growing.
Eat it.
Radish is super spicy, very zesty. Woo! And it's hot. You'll know about that. All right, here are some facts, frequently asked questions about microgreens and growing microgreens. So firstly, what is the easiest microgreen to grow? And from my experience, all of the brassicas are very easy to grow, especially radish and broccoli. Those two are very hardy. They grow very quickly. They can grow in pretty much any conditions. They don't require too much watering. They really are not mold prevalent and they're super easy. So if you're looking for the easiest ones to start with, I highly recommend any of the radish species and broccoli. On the flip of that, which is the hardest microgreen to grow, I know there are very specialist microgreen species that require very niche conditions that I haven't even attempted. You'll see them on the seed websites. They're usually the most expensive seeds and they require high humidity and just different conditions that are just your living room or kitchen. But out of the ones that I've done, sunflower are without a doubt the hardest. They have big black shells on, which means that they need 8 hours of soaking before you can even put them in the trays. It also means that when they grow, you have to pick off the seed shells or pick them up off the floor. And they are very prevalent to mold. All of the trays I've ever had mold with have been sunflower. But for me, they're probably the tastiest or at least the most snackable. So like many things in life, the one that requires the most work seemingly has one of the biggest upsides because they're very, very nutritious as well. So if you venture down the sunflower streets, just know that they come with the precautions and they come with some extras. Do I need light to grow microgreens? Short answer is no, but yes, because if you don't, you'll be dependent on the sun. And whilst I love the sun, it's very rarely out consistently. Plus, with the angle of sun, it's very rare for it to be consistent on the actual tray itself, meaning that your plants are going to grow like this or like this. And it's just a whole host of problems because if there's no sun, they're not going to grow. So I would highly recommend getting a plant light. You can get one for $8 to $10 with the right spectrum. Uses very little energy and it's very reliable. What temperature do I need for microgreens? Microgreens are very hardy and very adaptable and will grow essentially at any room temperature. So anywhere between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'll put the Celsius up here for that too, they will grow. But over time, you will notice at what temperature they grow best. And you'll find that the colder it is on that scale, the slower they'll grow, the more inconsistently they'll grow. And the higher on that scale, you'll start to see patchier growth and more mold and probably growing a little bit too quick as well. So the stems are quite thin. You don't really want that and they might get a bit leggy too. So for us, 72 degrees to 73 degrees is perfect. How much space do I need to grow microgreens? Well, I would recommend getting yourself a rack like this. It doesn't have to be this big or this size, but it allows you to have multiple trays growing and the lights attach easily. Plus, you can kind of slide out the way and it keeps it separate. But you could just grow these on your kitchen counter on top of an appliance that you're not using. It's just a little bit harder to mount that light. But you don't need much room. If you're growing smaller trays, if you're growing in a tray like this size, 5 inches, you could just grow this anywhere in your house and they will grow. There's going to be good airflow and good temperatures, so you don't need much room. Which is the most nutritious microgreen? Well, they all have various different health benefits. And remember, microgreen is just a term for any baby vegetable, meaning that there are so many different types. It's hard to say exactly which is the most nutritious. That's why we recommend having a variety, growing a variety, not only for the taste and palatability, but also for the health benefits, because the more diversity you have, the better off you'll be. That said, the most research that I've found has been on broccoli. That's been pretty well studied, and it shows that it has up to 45 times more nutrient density than its fully grown counterpart, plus a whole host of other benefits. So It's just a staple that we grow. It's also really easy to grow, as I've said. So it's easy to grow, it's nutritious, and it's affordable. So I recommend having that in your rotation. How many trays should you grow? That is totally up to your personal consumption. If you're growing just for yourself, if you're growing for family members, if you're growing to sell, that's going to change completely. But I recommend having a minimum of 1 tray on the go pretty much all year round. I mean, for $5 a week plus a little bit of work, you saw me sew that tray in, I don't know, 8 minutes plus I was talking to you. It's very easy to do. And then you can scale from there up or down. If that's too much, you can reduce the tray size to a smaller one. If it's too little, which I hope it is because you'll be eating more of them, you could have 2 trays on rotation, and therefore you could have some in germination. And there are trackers which I'll link below here to help you plan all of this, but adjust it to suit your needs. And when you get into it, you'll see exactly how much you need. Well, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. This is Feel Better Living, and from my humble perspective, growing microgreens at home is an unbelievable way to feel better living. You're going to be surrounded by growing plants. You're going to be eating fresh living enzymes more consistently. You're going to have something else to worry about in the mental bandwidth than just whatever is going on in your life. And you're going to have fun. It's just an unbelievably great experience, one that you can probably tell I'm rather passionate about sharing the message of. So if you have any other questions from this video, do your research. There are some great YouTubers that do a whole host of content on microgreens. In fact, their entire page is microgreens with endless amounts of tips and tricks. Or you can comment below this video with whatever questions that you have, and I'll do my best to get back to you. And if you want more content like this on this channel, various different things we can talk about with microgreens, I'd happily do that. Just let us know what you want to see. And I wish you good luck in this journey. Please share your pictures, successes, enjoyment, experience with growing microgreens, how it impacts your health, your family's health, your state of being. And if it helps you feel better living, please let us know. That's why we're doing this channel. Much love. Appreciate you all. Peace.